Blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Out to our friend John Tamny from RealClearPolitics.com. End work, your passion becomes, well, your future. Director of Center for Economic Freedom at FreedomWorks. You've got a lot going on. A columnist at Forbes, editor at RealClearMarkets.com. John, good to have you back.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me on. I'm lucky to get to do things that I really enjoy.
Well, we appreciate, by the way, your website. You've got your own website, johntamny.com as well, and on Facebook as well. Let's start with something. Economically, how are we doing? This is one of your gigs, and then we're going to kind of delve into a little of how you can get that side hustle to become your full-time hustle and your passion and such. But let's examine this. How are we doing based on your models, based on your reporting, sir?
Well, it may surprise you or it may not surprise you. I just look at the stock market, and the stock market never tells you how you're doing at the moment. Generally, what it indicates is what investors think about the future. And for now, they're obviously optimistic that there's not too much bad happening in Washington. I do not like the protectionism, but I think there's a market consensus that Washington can only go so far with that, and as a result, people will continue to prosper. Individuals will, businesses will. So right now, markets indicate an economy that's in good shape.
Well, sir, you and I are going to agree to disagree. I come from that popular economist Patrick Joseph Buchanan's world, so of protection.
He's a great writer.
I'm with you, brother. But John, certainly the tariffs. I know you're not a fan of it. We talked about it before, but certainly they seem to be having a better than desired impact than before, right? People are coming to the table. This NAFTA agreement looks better than the last one, or does it to you, sir?
Well, you always have to consider the unseen. Would we be better off if President Trump, and I would say this about any president, just played golf all the time? I tend to think that when presidents do very little, we're much better off because, an economy is just individuals, and the natural state of individuals is to grow. My concern is, look, obviously if I were a dictator, I would say we would have no trade agreements, that as Americans, individuals, we are free to trade with whomever we want. Why would I don't quite get why renegotiate what was already there. And Republicans are historically the party that says we don't want government involving itself in commerce, that commerce is too complicated. It's the result of infinite decisions. And so you see this agreement that says, okay, there has to be this much manufactured product in cars for them to flow freely between the U.S. and Mexico, and there has to be this much $16 an hour labor. That's central planning, and I'll wager a lot of money that a lot of the people, I'm not saying you, but people who support this, if Hillary Clinton had done the same thing, they would have said, look at her, she's a central planner trying to manage our economy. I don't like that.
John Tamny joining us, the end of work, why your passion can become your job, with Kevin Miller here at KIDO Talk Radio. What about the state of things in Washington? I don't want to delve too much from your jurisdiction of economics, but I don't think you'll have a problem with that. The Mueller thing, Bruce Orr, this, that, and the other, the Google, everything else. Does that really impact people here in Idaho? Or is that just fodder for talk radio?
Oh, I think you nail it. I think it's fodder for talk radio. The very notion that the legendarily incompetent Russians influenced an election is so ridiculous as to make me feel guilty for even mentioning it. I mean, did the Russians tell Hillary not to campaign in Michigan and Wisconsin? Did they tell her to just be an awful candidate who offended half of America with their deplorables comment? For them to try to delegitimize President Trump's election is just ridiculous. The shame about it, but this is probably what makes Trump who he is that he tends to step on things that would enable him to basically have a better story to tell. But I think Google is one of them. The idea that Google is all powerful, let's not forget that in 2006, it was passed as the most visited website by, guess what? MySpace. When's the last time you heard of MySpace? MySpace was viewed as a monopoly back in 12 years ago. Now it's largely disappeared. And so if in fact Google's rigging search counts, okay, fine. That's a market opportunity for someone to come in and beat Google. So I think we do overrate a lot of this from both sides. What's important is that there's gridlock in Washington. If you can show me gridlock, I'll show you a good economy.
Wow. John Tamny joining us. Hey, let's talk a little bit more about the economy, if you will. What about China? And I'm reading this fascinating piece in Bloomberg about what a Chinese superpower looks like, but China owns a lot of us. I don't know if we own a lot of them. And does that dovetail into debt and deficit and eventually how that's going to impact you and I that are going to have to pay for all this excess?
Well, China's still a very poor country relative to the United States, and understand why they don't own more debt than the Japanese or British do, the last I checked, but they own, I think, 7% of U.S. debt. They own it because they view American debt as very reliable to own, and they want it paid back as anyone would be. They're still a very poor country. The nice thing about that is that why would you invade a country that owes you a lot of money? It'd be kind of self-defeating. Why would you also invade a country that represents a big market for your companies? Let's be clear that that's happening in the reverse now, too. Apple's the most valuable company in the world. Where does it get a quarter of its revenues? Chinese buyers. Starbucks has 3,400 Starbucks stores in China. It's going up to 7,000. There are double the number of Starbucks in Shanghai than there are in New York City. Nike's number 2 market is China. Other than the United States, which country has the most McDonald's? It's China. The list goes on and on. Boeing sells a quarter of its planes in China. GM sold more cars in China in the first quarter than it did in all of North America. And so the Chinese are seeing the most demand for U.S. goods. And so they're becoming a huge market for our incredibly valuable and innovative companies, and then we're a big market for them. And so I don't worry about China becoming a superpower or invasive power. We're so interconnected with the country, it would be damaging to all concerned.
John Tamny joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. All right, so truth be told, I just bought your book on Amazon.
Well, then I really agree with you now.
Right. Well, right. Forget about tariffs. Tariffs are a good thing, and Pat Buchanan's the number one economist of all time.
I love Pat Buchanan. I think he's such a sweet man, and he's a brilliant writer. I disagree with him on tariffs, but I think he's brilliant. Yeah,
and people that know Pat personally, you've hit the nail on the head. He is so different from how the media has portrayed him, and I wish that he would do more TV. But anyway, I digress. Back to turning the book into turning your passion into work. That's easier said than done, and not everybody is you. Not everybody is driven. It does take extra effort to do what you love, right?
Oh, it does. And let me be clear, it wasn't exactly easy for me. I've been working all sorts of different jobs as a fundraiser, all sorts of different jobs to pay the bills so I could be a writer. It was years for me before I could ever get paid for anything I'd written or paid for a speech. Let me also be clear that I was laid off from a job on Wall Street. It was devastating. I was ashamed to show my face. I've had all sorts of setbacks. I was one time opinions editor at Forbes, was demoted from that rather publicly. It's not been an easy ride, but I've been able to do it, and I've been willing to work all these other jobs because I love writing. I love reading. I love putting ideas together. I listen to you. Think about what you are basically paid for being informed, for reading. What a triumph of capitalism that you and I get to do things that we're so incredibly passionate about. And my book is merely making the case that this is more and more true for lots of people. Football's an incredibly cerebral sport in my mind. Well, now there are in the state of Georgia alone, there are 36 high school football coaches who earn over $100,000 a year. It used to be that video games was a childhood passion. Now it's a profession, and it's a well-paid one. It's so well-paid that there are now video game coaches who earn over $50,000 a year coaching these people on it. If you and I had said we were going to do that when we were kids, they would have said we had a substance abuse problem. And so the list goes on and on.
Right.
The ways in which people can make money today, and I think it's exciting, and I think it needs to be celebrated.
John Tammany joining us here. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. And look, $100,000 in Georgia, having lived in that state in one of my many quantum leaps in life, goes a long way.
Oh, it certainly does, and thank goodness for that. You know, it's people have always assumed that football is kind of a meathead sport, and in reality, it's very, very cerebral. It takes the best players have the best minds. Rob Gronkowski is one of the greatest football minds on earth, and the Patriots are able to run a different kind of offense because of him. And my book is merely saying we should celebrate people who are good at this. And what's exciting is that unlike 30 years ago, you can make a career out of your love of football. And in the 1970s, if you were a cook, chef wasn't even a professional classification back then. People looked at you like you were a failure. If you said you were going into the restaurant business,
right,
it was seen as something wrong had happened. Nowadays, it's viewed as an alternative to becoming a doctor or a lawyer. And this is what I stress in the book is that no one lacks work ethic. No one lacks intelligence because everyone's good at something, and very, very good at something. But historically, there's no professional application to it. But nowadays, you can make a career out of your love of shopping. You can make a career out of your love of wine, your love of food. I was reading today in the Washington Post, of all things, every NFL team, every college team, football team now has a full-time nutritionist on staff. Not too long ago, very few of them did. And so the ways in which we can specialize today are endless.
John Tammany joining us. Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. Finally, though, and you know, John, I've had my public firings and coming back from the adversity, and I thank you so much for this. Is the first time you've shared some of your setbacks. In the past, you've talked about your earnestness, working hard, but your setbacks, and whether it's public or private, when you do have a setback, the importance of not giving up. What would you say to people right now that maybe they're having a setback and they're going, why am I doing this? Maybe I should just give up and join the other people crowd.
Well, what I would say is, for one thing, I know it's agony because I've lived it. You know it's agony because you've lived it. But from these awful things, unearths creativity, unearths IQ that forces you to think about what could you do that would make you really happy? What could you do that would make you an expert? And that's a freeing thing because once I recognized that, I was willing to take any kind of job to pay the bills so that I could what it was I really enjoyed. Is it a seamless process? No, it's not. But it's certainly fulfilling as you gradually move up in the ranks by virtue of doing other things to pay the bills so that you can do what you want to do. And the other thing I would say is that this is kind of maybe a smack in the bottom, but never forget that you won the lottery being born in the United States. You are the envy of the world. You have the world's language, and you get to live in the country that has the greatest economy on earth. Don't give that up. Don't not use it.
Sure.
The rest of the world would give anything to be here. And combine that with thinking about what it would pain you not to do, and I can assure you there's a job associated with it. It may not pay right away. It may be that you have to do something else on the way to doing what you love. I certainly did, but it's worth it.
The end of work, while your passion can become your job. John Tammany with us. By the way, it'll be thanks to the new economy. It'll be here by Friday for me. I appreciate you, brother.
I like it, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me on. You're so nice to let me state my case.
No, look, fellow followers, true believers, John, and appreciate you. I'm not kidding. I did buy your book, so I'm going to start working on it. And I'm going to try once again, like debating economics initially in this segment. I'm going to try and debate you on your own book the next time we have you on.
I'd love to. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for buying it.
Take care, sir.
Have a great day.
You too. All right, our friend John Tammany joining us. Not to be outdone by our friend Mike Tracy here at KIDO Talk Radio. Mike Tracy, fresh off the workout, ready to roll. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good to talk to you, Kevin. Hey, I loved your. Is it John Tammany? I loved what he had to say. I agreed with everything he said. The only issue I had was on the tariff issue, and the reason for that is simply this. We're not on a level playing field, and just in agriculture alone, there are ways to stop agricultural trade across borders without using tariffs. For instance, we've shipped stuff to Japan, to China, and to other countries, and they leave it sitting in the port, and the food rots rather than gets delivered. They do things. They put up trade barriers that are non-tariff barriers. And if every country was playing by the same rules on a level playing field, we would beat them every time. But the other countries don't play by the same rules that we do. And I think that Trump wants to get rid of the tariffs. I'd love to see tariffs disappear completely, but I think these short-term tariffs are helpful to bring these folks to the table, and that's exactly what's happening. In a perfect world, we wouldn't need tariffs, but we're not in a perfect world, and that's why Trump is using tariffs as a short-term tool, and it's part of his whole MO as the art of the deal.
All right, Mike Tracy, I got a fastball for you. So we've got ultra-left candidates in Florida, ultra-left candidates in Arizona. All of a sudden, the libs are coming out from all over the place. Does that mean that Paulette Jordan could have a shot against Brad Little in the fall?
Not a prayer. Not a prayer. Brad's working too hard. When Paulette Jordan's real record comes out on guns, health care, and everything else, she will be rejected in a resounding fashion by the Idahoans. She'll be lucky to get 35%.
I would agree with you on that. I really do. It's fascinating, though. One more question from Mike Tracy here at KIDO Talk Radio. What do you make of these ultra-lefties, these socialists on the Democrats getting the state nominations in Florida and other places, declared avowed socialists in America?
Well, I think it's absolutely a wonderful thing for conservative Republicans who are running for office, because it shows a very distinct difference between what a conservative Republican looks like and what a liberal socialist Democrat looks like. And the choice is going to be very simple in November. And I believe that the American people, district by district, state by state, governorship by governorship, are going to vote heavily Republican, conservative Republican, and there's not going to be a blue wave. There's going to be a red wave. On November 7th, the morning of November 7th, we're going to see an overwhelming red wave. We're going to see a gain in seats in both the House and the Senate for Republicans.
Mike Tracy, always appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our great friend Mike Tracy. You know, he's always very professional. That sound, resounding thank you afterwards. Okay, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. You want to know how crazy the world is? When people start criticizing President Trump, just substitute the name Obama. And would these same people even have a smidgen of criticism? I'd love to hear from you next. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
And that's going to resolve itself in terms of valuations or in terms of fundamental.
There we have it. Kevin Miller in the morning. Phone number is 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Here's the latest one. We're taking a look at Bruce Ohr. Now, Bruce Ohr was grilled yesterday over the Trump dossier. Sean Hannity was covering it. Here is Darrell Issa telling our own Brian Kilmeade on Fox and Friends just moments ago what it all means for the Trump investigation and whether or not we're finally going to find out what Hillary Clinton did.
We've confirmed that Bruce Ohr was a willing and constant conduit between Fusion GPS, paid for by the Clinton campaign, and the FBI. What we find interesting is that because he's an attorney, when he was examined by Trey Gowdy, myself, Jim Jordan, and others, he seemed to ignore a couple of things like, well, did you ever in your career before make yourself a fact witness, put yourself in the middle as an attorney in a way in which you were conflicted by actually being, for example, the conduit of these USB filled with the dossier and so on. And he said he had never done it before, and he knew it. As I think you've reported, but I want to go on the record very clearly, He knew he was delivering not hearsay, but double hearsay that would never stand up in court. And he admitted that he was providing as fact that which was and turns out to be fiction.
Darrell Issa is right. Where's the investigation into this one? And I'm Kevin Miller in the morning here at KIDO Talk Radio. So it's fairly obvious. And if you were catching Sean Hannity yesterday afternoon, he was breaking it down. Here you have Congress outing this guy for passing the documents from Hillary Clinton based on hearsay, ginning all this up with Strzok, with Page, with everything else to the FBI to launch this thing. Crap. Where's the retribution? Where's the responsibility there? Right? That's number one. Number two, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, our great friend, former U.S. Attorney Chuck Ambrose, is going to break everything down for us Friday morning at 8 o'clock. Chuck lives in Idaho now, loves it, best-selling author. He said, Kevin Miller, I've got to get on. There is so much going on. And one thing about when Chuck Ambrose is on, he'll answer any and all legal questions. Remember, Chuck was the first one, before the national media picked up on this, before the conservative media picked up on this, that Comey and Rosenstein and Mueller were all buddies, that Comey and Mueller were buddies. And remember, James Comey, Mr. I'm offended. I mean, he sounds like a wimp. He's a big, tall guy, but he sounds like a wimp. Would J. Edgar Hoover sit up there and say, well, I leaked this because I got my feelings hurt? It's crazy. So we're going to construct it coming up, but we're also going to hear from Chuck Ambrose. You don't want to miss that. That is Friday at 8 o'clock. Don't forget, next week we will be live in Washington, D.C., covering the immigration issue, holding their feet to the fire, thanks to our friends at FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. It is our yearly pilgrimage to Washington. Your phone calls next. Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning.
And don't forget, Glenn Beck, Dave Ramsey, in between Sean Hannity. Jessica Rosenthal joins us now, KIDO Talk Radio. It's been a while. Jessica, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk a little bit about the Arizona primary results. Were there any surprises?
I don't know if there were any surprises. There were definitely some indications and takeaways. And I think there might have been a little bit of a surprise that within the Republican ranks that Martha McSally won. Some of the folks that I spoke to were definitely hoping for somebody they feel is more in line with President Trump, though Martha McSally really did put herself in line with him throughout her campaign. But the polls indicated ahead of time that she was going to win. And just to remind your listeners, Martha McSally is an Air Force pilot turned congresswoman in Arizona's 2nd District, and she ran against Kelly Ward and Joe Arpaio, the former sheriff of Maricopa County, for a soon-to-be open Senate seat. Jeff Flake is retiring. Now, I think the most interesting aspect of Arizona right now is that Democrats are really hopeful that what is traditionally seen as a red state will help them in their efforts to materialize this blue wave. Facing McSally now in the fall will be Democratic Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema. Sinema essentially ran unopposed in her Democratic primary for Flake's Senate seat. She did have an opponent, but it was a blowout, and the polls indicated it was going to be that way for a while. And she kind of used the time in her campaign to position herself as a centrist. Of course, the Republicans like McSally and Ward, mocked that and said, she is in no way a centrist. But I think we see, on both sides of this race, Republicans aligning themselves with President Trump, and a Democratic candidate, Kyrsten Sinema, sort of praising John McCain. So if that gives you any insight into Arizona politics, that right there might speak volumes. And I think the other race that Democrats are also hopeful about here is, District 2. McSally's leaving that seat to run for Senate. And when you look at District 2, it's evenly split roughly in party registration. The Democrats think, hey, we have a shot at, not just this Senate seat that Flake's leaving open, but McSally's House seat as well.
A lot going on in Arizona. Of course, Sheriff Joe Arpaio didn't do as well as he expected.
He did not. I don't know if he was expected to do that well. I mean, the polls ahead of Tuesday weren't so great for him. And, you know, when I talk to voters here, the ones on the right, the more conservative folks, you know, they weren't really considering him. You know, they like him and they appreciate his siding with President Trump on pretty much everything. But they just didn't see him as a real competitive candidate. You know, President Trump did end up pardoning Sheriff Joe, who was held in criminal contempt over the way he handled patrols and looking for undocumented workers. And that was in 2011. So like 7 years later, you had President Trump pardoning Sheriff Joe for being held in criminal contempt. And he's like 86 now. So I just feel like a lot of folks I talk to, they like him, they respect him, conservatives do, but they didn't really, a lot of them weren't taking him too seriously for the position of being a senator. Sure.
Boy, that guy, though, he came to town a couple times, and it was like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. Still has it all in his mid-80s. Really quick-witted guy.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. He might be slowing down a little bit, but that happens, you know.
Are you slowing down at all yet, Jessica?
I've been up since 2 a.m. my time, so yeah, I slowed down a while ago.
Point well taken. Finally, the reaction there to the death of John McCain.
Yeah, people have been asking me all morning, you know, did that really sort of overshadow things? I think emotionally it overshadowed things, but let's remember primary elections bring out the base. They're not generals. They bring out people who are, you know, particularly motivated to pick the candidate from their party. So I don't know if it overshadowed people who were already motivated to participate. And let's keep in mind, a lot of people already voted by the time John McCain had passed. This is an early vote state. People often mail in their ballots, and that happened en masse before John McCain passed away. So, it's going to be a week of ceremony for him. And even the Republicans I spoke to who didn't like his policies and felt he reached across the aisle a little too much, feel that he deserves the ceremony and circumstance that is going to be afforded him this week, including all of the lying in state and, you know, the ceremonies at the National Cathedral and the funeral services. They feel that he earned it and deserved it because of his service, his military service, and the fact that he was a prisoner of war. So either way, however you felt about John McCain politically, it has felt like in this state that everyone's found a reason to honor him and to respect the amount of ceremony and circumstance that will be happening through Sunday in his honor.
Jessica Rosenthal, get some sleep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica Rosenthal joining us from Fox News Radio. Remember, you're home for Fox News on the radio in the Treasure Valley, KIDO Talk Radio. Joining us now, you know, it was the first time in a long time. I don't think we had you on for at least a day, maybe 2 days. Liberty Linda returns. Good morning.
Yes, well, I've been sick. I haven't been able to call in, but I'm back.
Well, good to have you back.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. You know, yes, Europe has gone bonkers. I can agree with you on it. I don't know what's going on over there, but, you know, I'd be afraid to even travel over there today. Everyone seems to be going left, if you know what I'm saying. And, you know, what is it about Liberal Steve calling your show silly this morning?
I mean, agree.
Doesn't he call in every morning?
Well, when it comes to making it silly.
Yeah, and doesn't he listen? Don't you think perhaps there's a part of him that wants to be conservative? Maybe that's why he calls in and listens every morning.
I think Liberal Steve shows his affection by being adversarial. And that's, in a weird way, Liberty Linda, that's how I show my affection, too, is sometimes starting arguments. But he takes it to a different level. So maybe that's it. Maybe I'm self-identifying with Liberal Steve, birds of a feather. You ever know people that they go at it all the time and people are going, wow, they're really fighting. But no, it's a very weird way. But anyway, back to you.
No, well, I agree with you completely. because we both have seen good things in Liberal Steve. We know he can be a good person.
I really don't know about that. See, and I'm being honest with you. I think Liberal Steve, and I've said this, and he's never confirmed this. You remember Andy Kaufman, and for kids, YouTube Andy Kaufman. He was the original shock guy, and he was a brilliant entertainer. And by the way, on Netflix or Amazon or maybe even YouTube has it, Man on the Moon or Man from the Moon, Jim Carrey plays Andy Kaufman. And remember, Kaufman did just such ridiculous things, and that was his shtick, just being outrageous, but not in a disrespectful way, not in a profanity way. He was just he was just your old fashioned I don't want to say jerk, just your old fashioned instigator.
Well, liberalism doesn't make any common sense to me. And now we're going not from being liberal to socialist.
Yeah.
Don't socialists know that if they win, eventually they'll take all the rights away from themselves? They'll wake up one morning and they're not going to have a right to go out there and talk.
Well,
so then what are they going to do?
Well, Liberty Linda, this is our generation's fight. And who would have ever thought in America created by God, delivered to us through the founding fathers, that we would be at a point where you would have our future generations actively considering eliminating our rights for socialism. And that's where we are today. The gift that our founding fathers have given us, the gift that the people that fought in the Great War and the other Great War to liberate us from National Socialism, from communism, we would have a generation so contaminated that we have candidates. And remember, Hitler was elected legally in Germany. We would have candidates actively espousing socialism. Now, I don't think these idiots can spell socialism, but in their hearts, it's equality. And one thing I will say, one of the reasons I blame the godless, blood-sucking corporations that stick it to everybody, that's why we have this. And then you have good people like you, like me, and others that are caught in the middle. We know socialism is wrong, but you have, rapid crony capitalism on the other side.
Well, when I was young, I actually knew a German woman, an older woman, very lovely person that came over from Germany after the war, and she told me how bad it was there, that they were afraid in their family. She had a younger brother, and he was one of the Hitler's young men, whatever they're called.
Hitler Youth, yes.
And she was afraid. Her mother and father and her were afraid to speak out in their own home because that her young brother would actually turn him in. And she worked in an office. They never said a word because she was frightened all the time. A lot of the German people were very good people, but they were frightened. They couldn't say anything at that time.
Sure.
And anyway, so, I understand what you're talking about with Hitler. So, and Kevin, I don't understand how people don't understand what President Trump is doing for our nation. It's for us. Everything that he fights for is for our freedoms and for the good of the United States. So all I can say is, Kevin, you keep up your good work every morning. I love tuning in and listening to you because I like common sense.
Well, common sense conservatism, that's where we are.
Absolutely. I understand it, and I agree with you, and maybe someday we'll bring Liberal Steve over to our side. Maybe he'll wake up.
He's a flipper. All right, Liberty Linda, you take care. Thank you.
You too, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, our great friend Liberty Linda. You're listening to Kevin Miller on 107.5 FM, 580 AM, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be a part of your day. Don't forget Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic going on now until Sunday. Spirit of Boise BalloonClassic.com, spiritofboise.com. Check out all the details there. Kevin Miller in the morning here, KIDO Talk Radio. Phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Big primary night wins for conservative Republicans and ultra-liberal Democrats. Some local news. Timmy Kenner, you remember the person who's accused in the mass stabbing case. He has pled not guilty. Imagine that. I wonder who he's going to blame for his reprehensible actions. Will it be someone else? We'll talk a little bit about that coming up. A big investigation going on in Washington that you won't hear anywhere else. Here's our own Catherine Heritage from Fox News on KIDO Talk Radio with the very latest.
The closed-door deposition lasted 7 hours with a consensus among Republican lawmakers. The Justice Department official Bruce Orr told the FBI there were issues with the Trump dossier and its author, former British spy Christopher Steele, but the evidence suggests the National Security Court was kept in the dark when it authorized a surveillance warrant for Trump campaign aid. One lawmaker said Orr's answers about the timing and handling of the dossier do not line up with other witnesses, including former FBI lawyer Lisa Page, who sent anti-Trump texts, and Glenn Simpson, whose firm Fusion GPS was paid by the DNC and Clinton campaign for the anti-Trump research. With more than 2 decades of government service, Orr's portfolio at the Justice Department was gangs and drugs, not Russia.
So why is he giving information to the FBI? Well, his wife worked for Fusion GPS. Right. His wife worked for Fusion GPS. The Christopher Steele dossier. Right? This is scary times that we're living in America. And I hope and I can pray that I can be with you through these times. Now, why do I say that? Because under Obama, conservatives were wiped out. I was talking to somebody yesterday about the military and the massive amount of deployments that happened during the Obama regime and how they did everything they could, multiple deployments. Not only is that brutal on the men and women, but the families, and how many families were torn apart because of that. Just like Obama trying to get rid of talk radio, trying to get rid of yours truly. Obama, the Sith Lord. Can I say that? I mean, we had this big controversy over, I like that, Emperor Palpatine, Emperor Obama. We had this big controversy over a cardboard with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton in a headlock. Thankfully, you either do that, you either keep it there at the Ada County Fair or the Western Idaho Fair, or you don't, Ada County Republicans. You just give somebody to go after you, a reason to do that, right? But back to my point. So here you have Andrew McCabe fired, James Comey fired, Rod Rosenstein should be fired. And you have this guy, Bruce Orr. His security clearance should be ripped. He should be fired. And take a look at what George Papadopoulos is going through. That guy was set up. What poor Paul Manafort is going through. He was convicted of stuff that didn't have anything to do with Trump. Michael Cohen, he flipped. He did, but he didn't. All for electing President Trump. So here you have a guy that, as Catherine Heritage broke down, is in gangs. Do you now actually believe that there wasn't an attempt to get rid of President Trump and Mueller needs to go? Maybe that'll be the Miller Minute. Mueller needs to go. Mueller needs to go. We'll talk about it coming up next. First, time for traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work.
Larry Gabbard.
All right. Thank you, Larry, at the Spirit of Boise Balloon Classic. But think of the world that we live in today. And, John Tammany started this hour saying we're in the best country ever. We are. But our country, the way we live it, the way your children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren are living it, is in peril. We have the indoctrination of the youth. We have the socialism. Did you ever think, whether you're in your 50s, 60s, 40s, 30s, 20s, that mainstream candidates, legitimate candidates, would be espousing socialism in the United States of America? I don't know about you, but I was taught socialism is wrong. Socialism is a failed policy. Can you tell me what country where socialism is winning? And on the other hand, we have unfettered, unbridled crony capitalism that has caused the rise of this income inequality. In my day, it was called get a job. We have both of these forces tearing at the very fabric of our great nation. This is our pledge, our challenge, our gift from the Founding Fathers to defend our republic. And that's where we are each and every day. I need your help. We need your help to keep America great. Another hour next. Kevin Miller in the morning on your home for Fox News on the radio in the Treasure Valley, KIDO Talk Radio.